The funny thing about surrender is that most people misunderstand it. They think surrender means giving up. They imagine defeat, like a warrior dropping his sword in the middle of the battlefield. But that is not what surrender is. Not at all. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is seeing clearly. It is realizing that you were never the one steering the river in the first place. For most of our lives, we live as if we are the captain of the ship. We grip the wheel tightly. We make plans. We draw maps. We calculate every wave and wind. And when the ocean behaves differently than we expected, we suffer. We say, "Why is this happening to me?" But the ocean never promised calm water. The ocean simply is. And surrender begins the moment you stop fighting the tide. Now, do not misunderstand me. Surrender is not passivity. It is not lying on the ground and letting life walk over you. No. Surrender is participation without attachment. It is dancing with life instead of wrestling with it. You still move. You still choose. You still act. But something inside you loosens. Something inside you stops trying to control the entire universe. And that loosening, that softening, is where grace enters. Grace cannot enter a clenched fist. Grace needs open hands. When your hands are open, life can place something there. When they are closed, even blessings cannot reach you. Many people imagine surrender happens in a single moment, like enlightenment, like lightning in the sky. But surrender is usually much quieter. It happens in small moments, tiny decisions. The moment you choose forgiveness instead of resentment. The moment you listen instead of defending. The moment you breathe instead of reacting. These are acts of surrender. Little doorways where love enters the room. The ego does not like surrender. Oh no. The ego loves control. It builds entire castles out of control. It says, if I can just arrange the world perfectly, then I will finally be safe. But the world refuses to stay arranged. People change. Bodies change. Plans collapse. And the ego panics because it believes that without control, everything will fall apart. But here is the mystery. Everything was never under your control anyway. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still living, still part of this great unfolding. Sometimes surrender comes through love. You fall in love with someone, and suddenly your carefully planned life opens. Your heart grows larger. Your priorities change. Love melts the rigid edges of the self. In that melting, surrender happens naturally. Sometimes surrender comes through suffering. You struggle, you fight, you resist, and eventually you grow tired. You realize that the struggle itself is the pain. So you stop. You allow the moment to be what it is. And strangely, that is when the suffering begins to transform. Pain that is resisted becomes suffering. Pain that is allowed becomes wisdom. The Guru teaches surrender not by force, but by presence. When you sit with someone who lives in surrender, you feel it. Their nervous system is calm. Their eyes are soft. They are not trying to convince the universe to behave. They are resting inside it. And something inside you recognizes that. Something inside you says, "Oh, this is possible." That is why devotion exists. Devotion is simply love directed towards something greater than the small self. A teacher, a truth, a divine presence. When devotion appears, surrender becomes easier, because love makes letting go natural. You do not force surrender when you love deeply. You fall into it. Imagine the ocean again. A drop of water floating alone feels fragile. It worries about the wind. It worries about disappearing. But when the drop returns to the ocean, it discovers something remarkable. It did not disappear. It expanded. That is surrender. Not losing yourself. Finding the larger self you were always part of. The identity we cling to so tightly is usually just a collection of old stories. Stories about who we think we are. Stories about what we deserve. Stories about how life should go. When those stories soften, something much more alive appears. Presence. Awareness, love without conditions. You begin to move through life differently. Joy still comes. Sadness still comes. But there is space around it, like clouds moving through a wide sky. The sky does not cling to the clouds. The sky allows them to pass. Surrender is becoming the sky. And here is the paradox. The more you surrender, the more life flows through you. creativity appears, compassion deepens, wisdom emerges. Because the energy that was once spent resisting reality is now free. Free to love, free to serve, free to simply be. Hanuman represents this perfectly. In the old stories, he is powerful beyond imagination. He can leap across oceans. He can move mountains. But he does not claim that power as his own. He offers it in service. His strength comes from devotion, from surrender, from remembering he is part of something infinitely larger. And you are not so different. Inside you lives the same possibility, the same capacity for love, the same connection to the great unfolding of life. But the doorway is surrender. So here is a small practice. When something in life feels difficult, pause, take a breath, and ask quietly, what would it feel like to allow this moment exactly as it is? Not forever, just this moment. You might be surprised by the answer. Often what we resist the most is simply asking to be seen. Surrender is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of a deeper one. A journey where life is no longer something you fight, but something you participate in. Where the heart grows softer and the mind grows quieter. And somewhere in that quiet, you begin to feel it. A gentle current moving through everything, guiding, holding, loving. And when you feel that current, even for a moment, you realize something extraordinary. You were never alone in the first place. This was a letter from Hanuman, a small reminder carried on the wind. If these words helped you, hold them gently. If they did not, let them drift away like clouds in the sky. Either way, the journey continues. Until next time, Jai Shri Ram.